M83 or M83 are a French electronic band. They were started in 1999 by a duo of a guy called Fromaggio and a guy called Gonzalez. In 2004, I think, Fromaggio left, and since then there have been sometimes a solo projects and sometimes up to a trio, but there are also additional musicians involved for live work. They've released 9 studio albums, the most recent being in 2023. Hi, my name's Dan. This is a review of the album Dead Cities, Red Seas, and just let me check that end, Lost Ghosts by M83 or M83, released in the year 2003, and it was their second studio album, and it's my first time listening to it and to them. This is described by Acclaimed Music as being electronic, and I'm not convinced that it really fits in the electronic genre. I think there's too much real sounding instrumentation here, although, of course, it could be samples. I don't know. The Wikipedia page, and I haven't dug further than the Wikipedia page, I confess, doesn't have a listing. Well, it has a listing of credits, and none of it seems to be real instruments. So it may be all done using samplers and sequences and things like that. But there's guitars here, I'm pretty sure, and I may be happier with this as being described as shoegaze. But I'm still finding my way in terms of what shoegaze is. Regardless of the genre holding, let's try and do some proper description. So I'm thinking of this as music as a substance, and that is probably almost my best description I can give, is texture rather than tunes or riffs. It's about making a sound, and that sound is kind of a continuum or a continuous feel to it. So this got me thinking, actually, and sometimes I do think, um, and it got me thinking that there seems to have been a move away from tunes and riffs, and I think the big strong emphasis on this started about the late 90s, maybe the mid 90s, with some indie rock where you're moving away from guitar riffs and you're just moving into guitar chords held uh, distorted electric guitar chords that are there kind of constantly, and we've got this kind of substance feel to it. And then modern metal, although it's not kind of so much a continuum thing as it's chuggy, but it's a move away from riffs and from solos and from shredding. And they've got dream pop and shoegaze and post rock, and they all seem to kind of be heading in this direction. But then I started thinking about, well, actually, there's been music before that was like this. There's ambient and there's dance and trance and krautrock and space rock and lots of modern classical, and this isn't actually a new thing, but it seems to maybe have become more mainstream now. This idea of you don't need a tune or you don't need something very specific to be listening to. So back to this album to do some descriptions. Very layered soundscapes, but unlike some things that you call soundscapes, it's got chords, it's got bars, you've got changes that happen, in a structured and coordinated way. But it still often feels like a wall of sound, just a lot of stuff going on, but with a variety of textures being used. So we've got synths, we've got guitars, we've got organ, we've got noise, and various other things. So this actually brings to mind a few albums ago, quite a few albums ago now, I reviewed a Sigur Rós album, and they kind of have that, but they've got singing as well. And this is, again, it reminded me a bit of their approach, but it's a fuller sound than the album of theirs that I reviewed. We've got some percussion here that peeps through, is not free form. As I say, there's bars and changes and stuff. There's even occasional bits where there's words being sung, but they're quite distant and I can't really make them out. The overall feel is cold, I would say. Maybe even windy and dark, like Antarctic at night with the aurora lighting up the sky. And I'm getting a bit synesthetic here, I know. But I get that kind of feel from it. So my first listen, I do a listen and then a read and then a listen. I've talked about this endlessly. In my first listen, I was okay with it. I was maybe a little bit on the bored side. Second listen, I responded better to it. It feels like what I call mid-ground music. So it's not background, it's not completely ignore it like some of the um, ambient stuff from a guy whose name I've just completely forgotten off the top of my head, or other textural music like that. But it's also not foreground music because to me, yeah, you've got to pay me attention. It's somewhere in the middle between these two. A lot of work has gone into making this a huge kind of mush of sound, a bit like the time just over a year ago when I tried to make a Black Forest ghetto and it turned into a Black Forest splatter. It was a big mush of cakey stuff, and that's what this is. So I kind of like it some, and it's slowly grown on me over from the first listen to the second listen to the little snatches that I listened to whilst I was writing the notes for the review as well. Um, it just squeaks a seven, and just kind of. So the distinction there is between the sixes and the sevens. Is the seven to me means I might choose to go back and listen to it, and I think I could just say maybe I would for this album. So I've given you a whole lot of stuff. That's what I think about this album. I'd love to know what you think. So please will you share that with me by leaving me a comment. But that's it from me for now.